Welcome, gentlemen around the world, to the Gentleman's Lounge. I'm Peyton, and I'm your host. Today, I want to bring back a segment which I haven't done in quite some time. Back when it was the Gentleman's Handbook podcast with two other gentlemen. Now it's just one gentleman. It was called Ask the Gents. Now it's called Ask a Gentleman. So today we're going to ask a gentleman. And I didn't get any emails or Instagram DMs or anything like that, but in my everyday life, I meet guys and they want answers to questions, and I figured why not answer them here. I work out at a gym pretty often. It's a speed and conditioning training gym. It's not your normal Olympic style gym, but it does have weights. So typically you'll find athletes there, all sorts of ages, young men mostly, early 20s, some teenagers, and even a few older guys who come around. We have conversations. It's just like being in a barbershop almost, you have conversations about everything under the sun. But in particular, I want to discuss two topics that one of the guys in the gym asked me about. I won't say his name, but I'll go ahead and discuss his question. So the first question was, how do you deal with disrespect from other men towards your women? In particular, he was questioning about, when you're not around, you got your woman, guys are going after her, guys are trying to holler at her, knowing she has a guy, guys are going diving in the DMs, even if there's pictures of you on the page. He felt like it was so disrespectful, and how does he deal with that? So my guy, easy, you don't. The question is this. Do you want to rack your brain and be stressed out over something you can't control? If your woman looks half good, other guys are going to try to talk to her. You have to be secure in yourself. The first thing is that even very overweight, unattractive women get talked to in public. I remember when I was a teenager, a guy told me that even the most mangy of dogs can catch a flea from time to time. And that's how it is with women. Even the most like unattractive woman, overweight woman, still has a sex life. Because men, when men want sex, they want the vagina that bad. So what you have to do is you have to first get with a woman you can trust. If you can trust a woman, it wouldn't be a problem. Me, myself, I've dated women where I know guys talk to them when I'm not around. I know guys who sort of knew me, try to holler, the whole nine. Most times I just let her handle it until it got to the point where it's disrespectful. The whole DM thing, guys seeing you with a girl, I guess if he had integrity, maybe he wouldn't do it, but most men don't. I mean, he doesn't owe you that. He doesn't know you. He doesn't know you or owe it to you to make sure your relationship stays safe and no cheating goes on. I mean, you just have to trust the girl you're with. Because if you start to show that you're insecure, that's going to lead to your relationship ending. Easy. Your relationship's going to either end or, she's going to cheat on you because you're insecure. Because when people get insecure, they get possessive, they get jealous unnecessarily, and no one likes that. So, and the next one, we had a conversation, and I was telling the guys about the standard I have for a woman I'm with. I'm like, listen, the woman I'm with, I'm going to need her to cook, and she's going to have to work, I was just laying out the standards I've gotten, and those guys are like, well, I don't know how you get that, how you get a woman to do those things, because women these days, they say this, they say that, I say people say things all day long. It's about what your actions are, and it's like I say the reason I want a woman to cook for me, and the reason I want a woman to rub my back and my feet and those things is because as a man, I build relationship through acts of kindness. Women like gifts, right? That's why women like, the gifts, that's the act of kindness for them. But for men, I don't want a gift. I don't want a woman to buy me things. I want a woman who's going to, cook for me, make me feel good, rub my back, give me peace when I get home. Those sorts of things, the small things. It's about acts of kindness. But he asked, about setting your standard, how you do it, He said, well, if that's the case, how come you don't have any women like that? I said, hey, how you know I don't? I do. I get exactly what I want because I made it clear what I wanted from the very beginning. Setting your standard is important. And, speaking of setting your standards, it's going to segue me right into the video about how to set your standard properly to get a woman to do the things that you want her to do. How do you do it? Well, the first thing you must know is, before I get officially started on the list, is that women are changeable and malleable. They just are. Women change with the men they get with a lot of times. I first noticed that when my mom got divorced from my dad. My mom, in my house, my mom didn't drink. She didn't allow my dad to drink. None of my parents smoked. None of them cursed. That's the way my house was. My mother did not allow that. And my dad, he wanted to keep the peace, so he didn't drink. My dad never was much of a drinker anyway. He didn't smoke at all. And no cursing was allowed in the house. And then my mom gets with this new guy. He has beer in his hand. He has an ice chest full of beer. He's cursing. And I'm appalled. I feel disrespected. I feel like he was disrespecting my mother. But I was young and I didn't understand what was going on. And women change according to the relationship they're in. It's like, have you ever dated a woman? And then you're like, wow. Man, she wasn't like that. Why? She changed a lot. She wasn't like that when she was with me. I'll give you a key example. Look at Sierra. Sierra, who's with Russell Wilson. Look at the stark differences between when she was with Future and when she was with Russell Wilson, right? When she was with Future, she was the woman that Future wanted her to be. Because the standard for Future was entertainment, it was strip clubs, it was, I don't know, But the standard for Russell Wilson was more family structured, more church going, more classiness, and she rose to the occasion. And that's how women are. If they feel that they got a man that they can trust and they can lean on, they'll change. Men, on the other hand, it's hard for us to change. Very hard. Very hard. We have to change ourselves. If a man's not ambitious, a woman's not going to make him ambitious. It's not going to happen. So let's get started on the list. The first thing to setting the standard with a woman is to be upfront. Be honest. So if you're a man who wants to date a woman who he's like, listen, I believe that a woman should work, say that up front. I believe that a woman should work. I don't believe in a woman staying home and not working while I work and get all the bacon. I don't believe in that. If you feel like you want a woman who doesn't work, you say, hey, I don't want my woman to work. I want my woman to stay home and I'm going to take care of that. I want my woman to primarily be a housewife, to take care of my children. Make it known. If you say, hey, I don't like arguing, I don't like fussing, I don't do that. I just like to relax. If we have disagreements, I like to communicate. Make it known. If you say, hey, I'm not the kind of person who gets into an argument and leaves, we need to discuss this, then say it. Whatever you want up front, say what you like from every aspect, whether it's sex, whether it's relationships, whether it's money, whether it's respect, make it known. I think that's the first place that guys go wrong. What they do is they never make it known what they want. They only speak it in their mind and hope that it comes to pass. Doesn't happen. Doesn't work like that. Closed mouths don't get fed. If you don't make it known what you want, 9 times out of 10, you won't get it. The second thing that typically you need to do when setting your standard is set standards that either you have achieved already or that you're capable of achieving on a consistent basis. So let's say your standard is, I believe that my woman should work out, but you overweight. I believe that we should eat right, but you don't eat right. What you're doing basically is you're being unfair. If anyone's in a leadership position, in a relationship, at a job, at a church, people will do as the leaders do. It's not about what doesn't work is do what I say, not what I do. That's not good leadership. Good leadership is setting an example for those to follow. So if you say, hey, I don't want to curse. This is a house where we don't curse. But then you out here cursing, you're not setting a standard that you can achieve. And then you come across looking like a hypocrite. You look like a phony. So if you say, hey, I see you gaining a little weight there, you need to get in the gym, but you overweight, she might look at you and say, you overweight too, why I gotta get in shape? You're not in shape, right? Because you don't have any leadership goals. Because you can't even be the standard that you set. You know, I know we've all come across people who want things from others they weren't willing to give themselves. And that's what you look like. You know, that's selfishness. It's not fairness. Because if you're in a workplace and your boss says, hey, or your manager says, hey, listen, everyone needs to be here at 7 a.m. Everyone, no matter what. Anybody who's late going to get written up. And then they come in the door 30 minutes late. You're like, are you kidding me? The rules don't apply to you? And as a leader, the rules not only apply to you, but they apply to you double. Because when people see that you are letting up on your standard, they let up on the standard. When they see you slack, they slack. But if you hold steady, they'll hold steady. The third one is something I talk about all the time. It's setting boundaries. Setting boundaries. So you may set your standard initially, but if you do not defend your standard, then your standard is meaningless. A lot of times people think that the law is powerful. The law is not powerful. It's those who have the ability to carry out the punishments for the laws that are on the books already that are powerful. That is the difference. So your standard could be powerful. It could be very powerful. But it could be very weak because you can't defend it. Right? So you have to set boundaries. When people cross that standard, you have to let it be known that there are consequences. And by consequences, I don't mean physical abuse. Don't go around slapping women who don't listen to your standard. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that if your standard is, hey, you know, I'm not a cursing person, and she agrees to that, then she's not going to curse. You're not going to curse. That's not what you do. If she curses, you have to say, whoa. See, I told you what it was, but now I see you think it's a game. I'm gonna have to go ahead and relieve you. If your standard is, I don't want a woman that smoke weed, and she's like, you know, I understand. I used to smoke, but I'm not gonna smoke anymore. And then she come home and she smell like weed. I mean, there gotta be consequences for that. You know, you have to say, you know what? I thought that we made it clear that this was something that we wasn't gonna do. But I see that obviously this is something you want to do, so obviously you may have to find another man because I'm not going to bend on that. You know, the things that you set in stone need to stay in stone. Because once one thing becomes flexible, oh, well, you can smoke a little weed. Next thing you know, you can curse a little bit. Next thing you know, you have no standards, nothing. And then you're going to try to enforce it down the road and she's going to laugh at you. It's no different than, you know, when men, you set that standard, like, man, anybody talk about me, anybody rip me, we fighting. And next thing you know, dude talking about you, and you don't fight him. Now people are like, yeah, you're a fraud. I think the last one, and the most important one, is to be consistent. And that's why I go back to number 2 and said that set a standard that you can maintain. Don't set lofty goals that you want to achieve, that you haven't achieved, because you haven't achieved them yet. So your word means nothing. You know, no one goes to a homeless man for medical advice. It just doesn't happen. So you got to understand that you have to be consistent. So if this is your standard today, it has to be your standard 5 years from now. It has to be the same. You have to consistently maintain what you set up. Because women are hyper-vigilant creatures, always looking, always watching to see a slippage, a kink in her armor, somewhere where they can slip up and say, you know what? You're not who you say you are. You're not who I thought you were. Think about it. You ever notice that guys, when you first meet a woman, a lot of guys, you go out of your way to give them your time, your energy. You go out of your way to buy them flowers and do these special things. Not because you're being a phony, some guys may be, but because you probably really like this woman. You know, the emotions are running high. You know, the chemicals in your brain are formulating those love chemicals. You know, you're getting dopamine rushes and things like that from being with the woman. But we all know that wears off. It's like going to church and catching the Holy Ghost, and then when you go home, you're like, yep, it's gone. So when it comes down to it, you set a standard early and you can't maintain that standard. You can't be consistent with that standard. And when you can't be consistent with that standard, what that does is that woman will say one thing. She'll say either, you know what, he got me now and he's gotten comfortable, one, or she'll say that, you know, you're taking me for granted. And it's not that you're taking it for granted. It's not that you've gotten comfortable. It's that you set a standard in which you cannot consistently maintain. Can't be consistent with it. Right? And that's the problem. So many times men don't know that you always set it. There's a standard that's always set, whether you set it or not. It just might not be to your liking. Because you go through the relationship or you go through any situation with no plan in place to say, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to set this up. And that's the problem. And that becomes the problem because there's always a standard. And your standard might be, I wake up at 12 o'clock in the afternoon. That's a standard. It's not a good standard, but it's a standard. Your standard might be, I smoke weed in the morning. I smoke weed before I go to bed. That might be your standard. I don't work out. That's your standard. Very loose. There's no expectations. That could be your standard. There's no plan in place here. That could be your standard. So remember, gentlemen, anytime you go to set your standard, you have to set your standard in a way that is, one, upfront and honest. Two, something that you've already achieved or is achievable. Three, you must set your boundaries. And four, you must be consistent. And that's all I got for you today, fellas. I'm out.